Because this is culture of winning, and I already said that. I'm Spike Cohen. Thanks so much for tuning in. For those who haven't watched it before, by the way, this is our 17th episode. And for those who haven't watched this before, well, first of all, thank you for joining. Second of all, well, no, thank you for joining. I'm not going to give you a hard time about not seeing the first 16 ones, but watch the first 16 ones after this if you haven't already. But here's what this show is about. We are here to talk with libertarians who have been elected to their offices to find out how they were able to do it, because we often talk about why libertarians haven't won races, but we need to talk more about when libertarians do win races and how they were able to do that, and be able to build a blueprint for how libertarians can get elected across the country. And this guest not only can tell us how he got elected and how to help build that blueprint, but he's actually going to be working on building that blueprint. We'll talk more about that. So without any further ado, my guest is the recently elected newest board member of the Ketchikan Gateway Borough School Board. I knew I'd mess that up, but we're going to talk to him about what he's doing there. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Americans, please join me in welcoming to the show Mr. Paul Robbins Jr. Paul, I am so sorry. I knew I'd butcher that. Ketchikan Gateway Borough School Board.
Yeah, it's a long name. Thanks for having me, Spike. Glad to get on here and talk about how often and how we can win, especially locally. I don't think people realize how often we actually do win on a local level in the Libertarian Party.
It happens a lot, and that's why I wanted to do this, is to let people know there are hundreds of libertarians that are in elected office right now. And more importantly, we can replicate how y'all have won your races. There's, you guys are great candidates, but the reality is there are things that you did that allow you to be able to win, allow us to be able to replicate what you've done and be able to win more races and scale it up a little and win even bigger ones. So let's get started. Before we get started on the actual how you won, let's talk about you a little bit. What even got you here? Whenever I have someone on any of my shows for the first time who's a libertarian, I always ask out of curiosity, what is it that brought you to libertarianism and the Libertarian Party? Was it kind of an aha moment, sort of a gradual evolution of time? Every libertarian has their genesis story. Tell us the Paul Robbins Jr. story.
Yeah, it was pretty gradual, but the one word is war. I served in the Marines from 2002 to 2014 as an enlisted person. I had a couple of different deployments to Iraq, and throughout my adult life, I was a pretty staunch Republican and very supportive early on in the wars. Obviously, I signed up to fight in them. Shortly after 9/11, I enlisted in September of 2002 after watching 9/11 in the classroom my last year of high school, right? So staunch Republican for a good long time. Then I deployed a couple of times, and witnessing war firsthand is an eye-opening experience. Every Marine goes into it just can't wait to get their chance to go to war.
Right.
And then I'd say about 99% of us, after we get our first taste, are like, that's good. I don't need to do it again. And then on top of that, when you start looking more into it, you grow a little more as an adult. And I started going to college and educating myself a little more. I think minoring in sociology helped open my eyes to different perspectives. and then I just started digging more into the wars that I was supporting myself and the wars that I had deployed in support of. And that started to disenfranchise me from the Republican Party and their staunch support of the wars, even though as it dragged on and on and on, and they kept sending us back again and again without much explanation, without any debate. And the more you look into it, without any actual justification, that really pulled me away from the Republican Party. And then what drew me into libertarianism, taking my real first steps, was Gary Johnson and his run. My wife and I were in California. I'd just gotten out of the Marine Corps, and just listening to him, I got excited about some of the things that he talked about, especially his anti-war stances. We were also pro marijuana legalization, which helped out. Went to one of his rallies, talked to some people, and that got my foot in the door. And what cemented it was volunteering and spending some time as part of Larry Sharp's campaign staff for his gubernatorial campaign. So writing press releases for him, taking the way that he communicates the libertarian message and trying to get that out to New York. That's what really settled me in the more, because I was being fed libertarian principles throughout and told to turn those into press releases and talking points. And the more I wrote, I was like, these are just things I already think. So, and from that, those people bringing me into it now, I'm the communications chair out here for the Alaska State Party, and as active as I can be.
So big lesson there, folks. What did he say? The reason that he got into libertarianism was because of things that happened. The reason he got into the party and is as active as he is now, one of the most active libertarians out there, including being elected to office, is that he got drawn into the party, into a campaign, was encouraged to get involved with activities, and you kind of gold pill yourself when you're among libertarians. You hear it over and over again. You're kind of predisposed to it anyway, and especially if you're writing stuff out, you're helping with releases and things, or whatever it is you're doing, you're hearing it more and more and more and more and more. It already makes more sense than any other ideas out there, and eventually you go, oh wow, this is what I think about everything. And so it's very, and not just this is what I think, but this is what I want to be involved in. This is how I want to help, move our, my community and my party and my family and my country forward, is in getting people involved at this. This is why I tell people, bring them in and then influence them with your ideas by encouraging them to be a part of what we're trying to build. So that's awesome that you're doing it, and I'm happy that you did it. Now, you actually, this is not your first time running for this office, right? You ran in the previous cycle. Was that 2 years prior?
Yes, I did run my first time 2 years ago, and I ran to unseat an incumbent, popular Republican, actually the local Republican chair. And I ran against her in a one-on-one race, and I lost by about 100 votes, which is not as close as some other races are, since there's only about 2,500 votes cast in this town, usually about a quarter of the population. But it was close, and I was proud of that. My first ever run to, and anybody who's run before knows unseating an incumbent is difficult in a re-election year, no matter who you're running against, unless they're just a terrible person. But that was inspiring to me to know that many people would listen and consider me for office. So the next year I ran again in a three-way race with 2 seats open, and was able to get the board. And what helped was, because I ran and lost the first year, I was actually appointed to the school board when there was a vacancy a couple of months later, and then served on the school board for 6 months prior to running for the permanent seat. So there's just so many ways to help yourself get in there in that initial seat. And losing should not be something that discourages you. It actually helps your future campaigns.
So we're going to talk about that in a second, because you actually ultimately you were running for re-election, having been appointed, or I guess continuing to stay in your seat that you were initially appointed to. What was it that made you want to run for this seat in the first place? Like what drew you to this school board race?
Well, for me, it's part of my long-term plan. I started out in the Marines because I have a long history of family service. When I got out of the Marines, my desire to serve my community didn't stop. So I've been active in the VFW and other organizations, and I just figured, why shouldn't I represent my town as well locally? So, and the school board seemed like a great place for me to start serving, because I have kids in the school system, and I believe education is, if not the most important, then one of the most important things community does, period, educating children. Right. So why not start there as a stepping stone of my my campaigning, and I plan to go from there to borough assembly, and then from there to mayor, and continue.
Well, that's yeah, and you know that you're right. I mean, education is absolutely crucial. It's arguable whether government should even be involved in it, but if it's going to be, it needs to be as accountable to parents and to and to teachers and to students to be able to provide an education. Otherwise, you're basically being robbed, and your kids are getting a terrible education as a result of it. So you ran the first time and you came pretty close. I mean, like you said, it wasn't razor's edge, but it was close. I mean,
Right.
100 votes in with 2,500 votes total, it's still a pretty close race. What were what were the biggest challenges both in that race and in the second race that you ultimately won? What were some of the biggest challenges that you had in running? Like, what were some of the hardest things that you had to go through in running?
I think the biggest challenge in running locally for me, and I think for anybody, is going to be figuring out how to reach all the different audiences that are within your community. Because any community has diverse audiences, even if you aren't diverse necessarily racially. You're going to have people of diverse interests, people who are spread out, people that just aren't normally interacting with you in order to get your message. So I took out newspaper ads, was what I decided on this latest run to be run in my community, because it's small enough that the newspaper still gets to a lot of people. Also went on multiple radio shows. I did the Chamber of Commerce candidate forum that they did for the school board as well. Tried to jump on any opportunity I had to speak, because I knew there was just so much of this population. I think there's 11,000 is what we run right now in our community as the population. And I've probably only personally talked to a few hundred of those people, since I've been here, maybe 1,000. So
Right.
how do I introduce myself to the other 10,000? So that was my challenge, was trying to figure out, how do I get my message or who I am to that many people? And I don't have a full answer for it, but I have a number of things I did. And I just think that's probably the biggest challenge I'll face continuing going on, is how do I reach that many people?
Right. We have the best ideas. It's really just a matter of the challenge of getting it in front of people so that they even know what it is that we think about stuff. So you
Mhm.
didn't win the first race. You came really close to winning, but then you got appointed. So this is an interesting story. Tell us about what led from your almost winning the race to you getting appointed, because this is an important part of what we tell people. Like, not everything is as much of a loss as you think it is. Not only can you learn and retool for the future, but you might actually end up winning as a result of your loss. Tell us about what led to that.
Yeah. So shortly after I lost that race, actually our board president had to resign because he got a fantastic job going to coach baseball in New Mexico. So he could no longer be on the board. So a seat opened up right away. And I was one of the only names that they knew that was actively seeking to serve on that board, who actually wanted to dedicate their time and actually was interested in serving on the school board. So after an election's finished, if an opening comes up like that, they send out a message basically saying, hey, who's interested? Fill out these forms, put them in. And you get about the same interest as you would for candidates, which is not much, sadly. So myself and a couple others put in applications, but it was a pretty easy decision for the board, like I said, because they only had one person identified as who was actively seeking the board, who had talked about how they would govern, who had been out in the community talking about school board issues. So it kind of made it an easy decision for them, because they knew that I was already willing. I had put in the time by campaigning, so obviously I
Right.
was willing to put in the time to be on the school board.
That's awesome. And so by your being connected in and also they know that it wasn't going to be a tremendous amount of backlash on them for appointing you, because you almost won. So,
Right.
they know that the public was pretty good with you. If there had been a 100 vote difference, you would have been the winner. Or actually, what, a 50 vote difference, you would have been the winner.
Hmm.
So, they're thinking, okay, well, this is someone that already has pretty well made his case to our voters, to our constituents, and he obviously cares enough to be running, that he'd want to be a part of it. And so, going into the second race. Now, let me ask you this: was the second race easier or harder? You obviously won it, but or was it roughly the same?
It was easier for me only because The first year was my first ever time campaigning. I'd never really sat through like a forum debate, which I did multiple of, um, through the local radio stations and the Chamber of Commerce. So that was all new the first year. So me coming up with the answers was more difficult. And the first year I did a lot more research than the second year because, well, frankly, it was already done the first year. So the second year I'm just going back to what I had already gone over. And I already had experience in the exact same forums, Chamber of Commerce and the local radio stations and things like that. I knew exactly how they were going to work. I knew what kind of questions they were asking for the most part. So the second time through was certainly easier from my perspective as a candidate because you've already done it, especially if you're running for the same position. But even if it was a different position, I still had experience in what I was going to face as a candidate. So that first race was just extremely valuable and just, taking some bruises, learning some lessons, and being ready to run a really good campaign the second time.
So and which is, I mean, that makes sense, right? You got the cobwebs out. So I'm sure also the nerves weren't as bad because you actually know what things are going to be like, and you actually know how the things are going to go. So you have a little bit more, prep behind that, and you had more, a little bit more name recognition, and you were already on the board. So I would imagine it was easier. And
That
again,
part
you
was
you
key,
didn't want.
Spike. After 6 months of serving on the board, I actually knew about its function more. So that made the second campaign much easier as well because I could speak more intelligently and through actual experience on the board made it a lot easier for me
Ah.
having served on it.
So being involved allows you to speak more intelligently. That would make sense.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
now that you're on the board, I'm going to breeze through the questions I normally ask because I want to focus on what we're working on together to be able to grow the
Mm.
party and win more races. So if there were one lesson that someone came to you, and we're going to be talking a lot more about this, but if you had to give, if someone came to you and said, what's the single biggest lesson that you learned from all this? If there was one thing that you could tell anyone who was thinking of running for office as a libertarian, what would that one thing be?
Well, my experience is entirely local, so I don't know if it'll translate as much statewide. I'm still working on learning about that. But I'll tell you that the most important thing to my running close the first time and the reason I got elected the second time, it had nothing to do with my platform. Almost nothing to do with my platform, I swear. It had everything to do with how active I was in the community. I believe most of the
Mm,
voters cared a lot more about the fact that I was a 2 year VFW commander, that I worked on the board for Ketchikan Little League and made sure that their finances and fundraising were good so we could have a baseball season. That I worked with the American Legion, that
yeah.
that I volunteer with the local swim team. All of these things are what, and the work I did with the schools as well, helping out at TSAS and the teachers and what they had to say about me as a parent. Me being active in the community is what got me elected and is what's
Yeah.
going to keep me elected and what gives people faith that I'm going to represent them because I've already established who I am to them by being involved in the community. And that's what's got me elected. It wasn't the newspaper ads, although I'm sure it helped me reach some people to ask some
Right.
questions. And it wasn't so much the forums. Those, I believe, were just a way of somebody to go, okay, that's who Paul Robbins is. Now let me go ask about him or go look into him. And then when they find out about all the volunteering, when they find out how active I am in this community, that's when they decided to vote for me.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned that this is local. That's not specific to your community. I've heard this over and you're my 17th guest. Almost pretty much every single guest has said the exact same thing, which is the community cares more about who you are and what you've done in and for the community than they do about your policies, which may not be good, but the lesson from that is that that's what matters the most. We as libertarians often think we're going to get them with our ideas. Well, kind of maybe, but we can win them over on our ideas, but the first thing we got to win them on is us and who we are. There's and I say this so much, but the phrase that's been around probably longer than any of us have been alive, which is, no one cares what you know until they know that you care. They have to
Mm-hmm.
know that that you even care about them in the first place before they care how knowledgeable you are, what your ideas are, or anything else. So no, that's 100%, man. You have to be involved in your community. I'll have people that say, someone, Katie, I hope I'm saying your name right, Katie, or Cade, said, actions speak louder than words. And that's exactly correct. Like they want to see what you're doing. And your actions then, as someone in the school board, you now, like you said, can speak from a position of authority, but also they, probably more importantly than that, they saw that you were actually doing it. And that means
Mhm.
a lot to people that often aren't thinking in political abstract stuff the way that a lot of libertarians tend to approach things. So let's, one more thing. So what would you say are your major goals in your school board? What are the main, now that you're in there, what, and since you've been in there, what are the things that you want to do while you're there?
Well, one of the things we've talked about quite a bit on the board is how all of us have kind of tossed our goals or what we thought we were going to do out the window because COVID has changed everything
Yeah.
we do as a school, right? And but I'm proud to say that Ketchikan is one of the only school districts in the nation that has been in school full time, 5 days a week, K through 12, since we started under this new school year starting in August, right? We did a great
Wow.
job of listening to our community and our admin and staff listening to. I mean, we would spend 4 hours listening to parents and teachers sometimes yell at us about what our plan was going to be for the next school year because how unacceptable it was to be learning from home. So it's all been about that. And I'll tell you, I campaigned on the fact that I didn't have big goals or pre-existing ideas for the school board. That I was simply going to go in, take the data that I was presented from the staff, take the input that I got from the community, and make the best decision possible for the kids.
Oh,
Because
wow.
for the most part, when it comes to the school board, and I believe this personally, on a local school board like this, there's a lot of things that we do where my ideology or my ideas don't really matter. What matters is just taking all that information and make the best possible decision with what we have, because there's only so much we can control within the school board. So I don't really have great goals other than to continue advocating that parents are the most important decision makers when it comes to what we do with our schools, as it's their children being educated, and continuing to make sure people understand how important it is. And the reason our school district is worth a damn is because we have multiple charter schools and parents have choices here in this small town. And that choice is very important to why even my wife and I decided to take the job and move to Alaska, is because we identified one of these charter schools as somewhere we wanted to send our son when we got here. So that's just two ideas that I remain focused on as we continue to navigate this COVID environment, which makes being on the school board kind of challenging.
Well, here's the thing. You may think, let me rephrase this. You are not governing as an ideologue, but you are using your ideology in that you are saying, and you said it right there, the parent
Mm-hmm.
should be the prime chooser of what's happening for their students. And so you are, as a
Right.
libertarian, you're going in, and yes, as I've heard from many people on school boards across the country, thanks to the federalized, increasingly federalized system of schooling we have, you largely are not in control. You're being given mandates at the federal and state levels and figuring out how to make it work while still serving the parents as best as you can. With that
Exactly.
said, to whatever extent you have control, your idea is to listen to the parents and do what they want you to do because they're the ones that paid for it. They're the stakeholders, if you will. And so,
Right.
no, I mean, it's you are applying. Someone else in your position may be thinking, well, I know better than these ignorant parents, and I'm going to make sure that
Yeah.
everything works out exactly how it should. And that's them applying their ideology to it. So you're doing a great job. Congratulations on your win. I want to talk about Gold Rush because you are, and in fact, it was Brian in the comments mentioned that you did an incredible job getting media and interviews for our campaign when Joe was up in Alaska for her. She was there for what, 3 or 4 days, something like that.
Yeah, we got her on a multi-city tour. She hit Ketchikan, she hit Juneau, and she had a big turnout in Wasilla, which is why we're having Gold Rush in Wasilla, because she had well over 100 people come outside in the cold and rain to come see her in Wasilla. And
Oh, wow.
and through that campaign that I helped organize here, we got three front pages of the major newspapers here across Southeast Alaska for Joe, and a number of radio interviews. Got the TV to come out and film her playing hockey. So yeah, we even though it didn't turn into as many votes as we would have liked, introducing that many people to the candidate and libertarianism, I think was just a success for us here in Alaska.
And to build upon that success, you have started something called Gold Rush, which I'm actually going to be at, and
Yes.
I'm going to be one of the speakers there. And you tell us about Gold Rush, because it's something that's in person in Wasilla, but you're also going to have
Right.
a live stream for anyone who wants to watch it, who wants to tune in and pay to watch that. Tell us about what Gold Rush is, what the goals are. Tell us about some of the speakers, and we can talk about that.
Certainly. So what we wanted to do is the Alaska Libertarian Party is putting on a training on April 17th. We call it the Alaska Gold Rush, and kudos to my chair and some other members who came up with that name. I thought it was pretty clever. And the idea is for us to have a gold rush in 2022 of winning libertarians in Alaska. But in order to do that, we have to start early. We have to start in 2021, and we have to train people, because we have a lot of talented people. We have a lot of people who may want to be candidates, but have no clue how. And I had to teach myself. So what we have starting on January 17th is from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We're going to go from start to finish. This is how you run and or support a campaign. So whether you want to be campaign staff or you want to be the candidate yourself, we're going to tell you about Alaska reporting requirements. We've got an expert, Caitlin Cloven, who ran the social media for the Spike and Joe campaign. She's going to
Yep.
talk to us about social media techniques. We've got what to do before you run, how to plan for running. We got Chrissy Wickers from Ohio Alaska Libertarian Party talking about it, and then we have Apollo Pazell coming out from the Libertarian National to tell us about field ops and the Frontier Project. I'm going to be giving a class on media relations, how to conduct an interview with the media, tips and tricks throughout that. So uh, it's going to be 8 hours, 8 1-hour sections, and you've got the final talk about the candidates winning, a winning mindset. So
Yep.
it's 1 hour sections of training, and you can tune in for 1 hour or all eight. I would suggest all of them, because it's just a complete training set to get us ready to campaign and win for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and so what I'm going to be talking on is I will be the final speaker, and kind of taking together what everyone else has talked about. People, Caitlin talking about social media, Chrissy talking about communications and activism, you talking about media relations, Apollo talking about fundraising, the folks who are coming out to talk about how to be able to what to do prior to campaigning, the people coming out talking about how to support other candidates, and I'm going to kind of tie all that together into how to build a culture of winning within the party, within your campaign, and within yourself as either a candidate or someone who is working to help the party and other candidates, and what a culture of winning actually looks like, and what it's going to take for us to be able to actually get the things that we want to get accomplished. We talk about ending wars, ending the Fed, we talk about setting people free, we talk about all this stuff, and we've gotten used to talking about it in the abstract. What would happen if we were to get elected? Well, we can get elected. We do get elected. We just have to do the things to be able to get elected more and elected at higher, at a scalable higher level, so that we can get the things accomplished that we want to. And we don't have to worry about what Republicrats are doing. We do what we're doing. We focus on our wins, and we can do amazing things. So tell us. So it's on April 17th from what's the time again?
8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
And that's Alaska time.
Alaska Standard Time, so 4 hours earlier than Eastern Time if you're going to jump on. So keep that in mind. And it's really important that we're doing this virtually, because we wanted this training to be open nationwide to libertarians. We didn't want to keep it all to ourselves. We want everybody to be able to take it. So we think other state affiliates, and I've opened this up to a couple other state affiliates who are talking about doing it, but all they have to do is have their folks leave at the 9 a.m. one, which is when we're talking about APOC reporting requirements for Alaska. It's a 1 hour class on how you have to report certain times your fundraising, otherwise Alaska
Right.
penalizes you. Well, each state has their own. So each state affiliate could just take their people and say, hey, from 9 to 10, you're going to jump over on this different Zoom where we're going to talk about our state. And the other 7 hours are good training for everyone else. So every single LP affiliate across the nation could take this as their training and just adapt that 1 hour. And now you've trained everybody in your state on how to be a successful candidate from start to finish.
That is genius. And I'm going to help you. We're going to get everyone connected to be able to do that, because that's genius. Because why not? Why not have it where as many states as possible say, okay, here, everyone, everything else applies to anyone running across all 50 states, plus DC.
Right.
And then that 1 hour we'll do something local. How it works for local candidate stuff for you. Yeah, no, we're definitely going to do that. So these are the types of things that I plan to be active in across the country, and we're already filling up my dance card for the year. Pretty much every weekend this year, starting in a couple weeks, I'm going to be somewhere else. But the point of
Excellent.
that is to we can win. We do win. And we talk a lot about why we don't win. And we talk a lot about what we can learn from when we don't win. And those are all fine, but we can't just focus on that. It would only make sense to only focus on that if we weren't also having successful people and people that were winning campaigns, often spending pennies compared to their much better funded and much higher name recognition Republican opponents.
Right.
If we know that that's the case, let's do that. Instead of winning 100 local races in an election cycle, let's win 500. Let's win, instead of winning 0 House races, let's focus on a handful of races and win 30 or 40 of them. Let's get libertarians in. If we're already winning and it can be scaled up slightly, there's no reason not to do that. So I'm very happy to. I can't wait to be up in Wasilla with you to be doing that. And yeah, we're definitely going to make sure the other states get involved with that as well. I think that's going to be fantastic. So Paul,
And Spike, for
thank you
elected
so much.
libertarians, let me add one thing, man, because I think
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's important that getting the numbers up is great. Numbers are great to share, especially
Hmm.
in a meme. But I think something that we've covered here that's really important for people to understand is uh, getting local libertarians elected and winning and leading is more about showing people what libertarian leadership and
Yes.
libertarian elected officials are like. Because getting back to earlier when we were talking about the abstractor, where you send out we're going to win with our ideas, we're not going to win with our ideas. We're going to
Right.
win with people learning who we are, uh, respecting who we are, and then they'll actually value our ideas based on who we are because
Yes.
we've connected with them, and now there's a reason to take our ideas and take them seriously. So that's why this is so important, is because we do have the best ideas, we do have
Yep.
the most morally right ideology, and we do have the best way to govern. But it's never going to really resonate until we connect with people. People accept us as, hey, you're just normal like us, you don't really want to bring about the apocalypse,
Yes.
and you do legislate like a normal person on behalf of me
Yep.
and everyone else. And then our ideas resonate, and then they go, just like you said before, and they go, hey, these are things I already think.
Yep, exactly. In the same way that bringing people into the campaigns, like it did with you, makes you more libertarian, getting people involved in seeing what you can do as a candidate once you're, or as an actual, an elected official who's doing positive things and who isn't, because we're often, you want to talk about memes, people, oh, libertarians, they're the ones that want to make it so that, everything that you eat and drink is unsafe. And they want to tear up all the roads and put all the orphans out on the sidewalk and just nonsense. when
Right.
and all we can say is, well, that's not true, that's not how it would go. But if we're in office, we can show, no, that's
Mm-hmm.
actually the opposite of what's happening. We made homelessness go down with this thing that we were able to implement, or we made the schools even more accountable to the teachers and to the parents, as a result of our being on school boards. We can show what real world libertarian governance looks like. It looks like the power being put back as much as possible in the hands of the people, and that's what people want. So,
Yes.
it's fantastic that we're doing this. I cannot wait to get up there, and yeah, we're definitely gonna make this as widespread a thing as possible. So, Paul, thank you so much for coming on. It was an absolute honor to have you on. Before I let you go, I just
Mm-hmm.
want to give you a chance to talk about anything that you feel like you didn't get a chance to talk about. Anything else that you want to promote? Let us know how people can register for this Gold Rush thing as well. But Paul, I'm going to let you have the last word. Paul Robbins Jr., the floor is yours.
Thanks, Spike. I think the only thing I would want to add is that for local affiliates, like we're doing, it's also important to demonstrate to the people in your party and people looking at your party that we are serious. And the way to do that is through trainings like these. They don't have to be as grandiose, but they still have to be established, where you're trying to train candidates and campaign staff, which you have to do anyway if you want to be successful. So getting out there and having these events and frequently engaging your local communities and your state affiliate members is really important. That's another reason we're doing this. So please go to AlaskaLP.org/Gold Rush. That's got all the information. It's got the program, the list of speakers, and it's also where you go to register. If you're going to come out in person and hang out with us, it's $65 to register. If you're going to attend virtually, it's $25. Why is there a fee? It should be free. Well, the reason there's a fee is because we had to rent a facility. We've got to provide food on site. We've got to fly in some of our guest speakers. You can't put on such a great training without spending a few bucks. And
right.
So that's why there's a registration cost. So we hope as many people can attend as possible. And if you're coming in person, make sure you arrive the night prior, because we're going to have a great evening social on Friday night at 6 p.m. there at the bar in Everett's. And rumor is that we're going to be setting up a karaoke machine, so there might be some video of Spike singing karaoke. There's going to be some salmon bribery that might get that going.
Yeah, so I was going to say, you've got what it takes to get me to sing, and that's lots and lots of plentiful, sustainable, wild-caught Alaskan sockeye salmon.
Yes.
So side note here. There has been a bit of a competition to get my wife and myself to move to various states. And the main competitors, I will say, have been the ones that have been the most aggressive with it have been Florida and Texas and Alaska. And there certainly have been others as well, but those are the ones that are routinely inboxing us saying, please move here. And I will say I was leaning towards Florida because of the beaches. I'm a beach guy. And I was considering possibly Texas because they have some beaches too. And, there's a lot of great stuff in Texas. And then you guys hit me with the salmon, and I'm like that might win me over. That might win me over. The salmon.
We have a lot of people, not just our board, but the people who are attending, who are planning on bringing gifts of salmon to appease Spike and Tasha and tip that scale away from Florida and Texas and towards Alaska.
It's just me. My wife likes salmon, but I'm the salmon addict. So if you end up successfully bribing me, it will be because of your seemingly endless stream of delicious wild-caught Alaskan sockeye salmon. Well, Paul, again, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Stick around. I'm going to talk with you during the outro. But folks, thanks again so much for tuning in to this 17th episode of Culture of Winning. I'm really excited to see where we go moving forward from here. We're going to have another exciting guest next Monday. But also, be sure to tune in tomorrow on Muddy Waters of Freedom. On Tuesday at 8, where Matt Wright and I parse through the week's events. And then join me on Wednesday night at 8. These are all Eastern time. For My Fellow Americans, where I will be talking with Chris Rufer, who is a libertarian businessman who has come up with a really ingenious model for basically creating a work environment that has almost no managers. He's basically applied libertarian thinking, giving the individual workers the autonomy to be able to make purchasing decisions and office and factory protocol decisions and things like that, because they're the ones who actually know what's happening, and it saves a fortune for the company and it allows everyone to make more money, including the workers. It's a really incredible thing. So we're going to get to talk about that. But so thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week for the next episode of Culture of Winning. I'm Spike Cohen, and you are the power. God bless, guys.